Is there anything like you're hoping to work on in the future?
I like what I do, and we just did this laser. I'm still writing up the laser study on the humans. I'm going to answer this differently. I don't want to work on humans anymore, and it's because the anthropology world is a lot more nitpicky, is a good term, than the paleontology world. And I think part of it is there's so few fossils. Everyone wants to work on the same stuff. And at this one site, there's 28 individuals. It's only 28. That represents 85% of this one particular species. So you have thousands of anthropologists that are just trying to work on the same stuff. So it's just a pain in the butt to work on. Part of my work was looking at horse evolution and what happens when the horse teeth go from this big to this big. I've just started to get back into that. My job is mainly to work on Ice Age animals, and the horse tooth thing, instead of being hundreds of thousands of years old, is between 15 and 20 million years old. And so I've gotten back into that, and I've realized that I really like it, so I kind of want to do that a little more.
So climate change is, I'm a plant biologist that's what my master's degree is in, and I look at the history of the atmosphere, and the climate has always changed.
Mm-hmm.
The downside of that, though, is extinctions, right? I guess there's not really a question there. Just
I'm going to go into it a little bit tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I think for me is you have two different things. You have climate change has always occurred. Is the record of climate change that we see unprecedented? No, it's not. It's not unprecedented for the history of the Earth. So the amount of change, temperature change that we've modeled to see is within the range of what we observed 125,000 years ago. The difference is it may be unprecedented for human civilization. So if we rise the temperature of the Earth, is that temperature, there's going to be consequences for that. And the consequences are, well, we're going to melt the ice caps, right? That's happened many times in the past. 125,000 years ago, sea levels were 6 to 7 meters higher than they are, so 21 feet higher than they are today. Well, if you rise sea levels 6 to 7 meters, where does everyone live in the world? Everyone lives on the coast. Think of New York City, it's on the coast. Think of Miami, it's on the coast. Los Angeles, on the coast. San Francisco, on the coast. New Orleans is underwater. It's on the coast. All of your major cities are on the coast. So it's not unprecedented. Like, we've seen this before, and actually one of my points that I'm going to talk about tomorrow is you can use paleontology to understand what's going to go on. It's not unprecedented, but do we want it to happen? So the only unprecedented thing, and it's not even unprecedented in the history of the Earth, is if you look at temperature change. So 25,000 years ago, temperatures were 8 degrees Celsius cooler than they are today. 125,000 years ago, temperatures were 2 degrees hotter than they are today, which is within the range of what we're projecting. 25,000 years ago, sea levels were 400 feet lower than they are today. So George's Bank, I don't know if you've ever heard of George's Bank. It's off the coast of Massachusetts. It's where a lot of fishing is done. George's Bank is now under lots of water. It was a hill. Long Island was a hill. Long Island is there because the glacier, the ice sheet came down and stopped on top of Long Island and deposited sand. The only reason Long Island is there is because we had a glacier. 125,000 years ago, the water was more melted, and sea levels were 6 meters higher than they are today. And I'll show you a picture tomorrow. 6 meters for Florida is a really high. I mean, if you know the big lake in Florida that's at the southern portion of the state, that was seafront property. That's inland by a lot. So, again, it's not unprecedented in the history of the Earth, but do we want it to happen? And you think of the Netherlands that is spending money to make dams and things so the water doesn't come in. We're going to have to do that if you don't want New York City to be flooded. Can we deal with it? Yeah, we can, but we're going to have to spend a lot of money to deal with it. The thing I don't like, and I was telling my wife this the other day, was I don't like reading about it because it makes me more and more depressed. The one thing that I don't, if you look at temperature change is, this is where I was getting with this. Temperature change has gone up and down. 25,000 years ago, 8 degrees cooler, 125,000 years, 2 degrees hotter. Correlated with that is CO2. CO2 has changes with, temperatures go like this. So here we are today. I'm going back in time. About 11,000 years ago, we go down, it comes back up, goes down. This is 25,000 years ago. Then about 100,000 years ago, it comes back down, it's like this, keeps going on. We go through ice ages and not ice ages. We call this interglacial versus glacial time. So this is the height of the last glacial maximum, 25,000 years ago. This is 125,000 years ago. We go through these every 100,000 years or so. Correlated with this is CO2. CO2 basically maps exactly. But it never, over at least the last 800,000 years, it never gets above 300 parts per million. Never, not once, does it ever get above 300 parts per million. This is what got me depressed the other day. Last April, we just went above 400. The last time we saw 400 in the Earth was 4 million years ago. And sea level was between 6 and 40 meters higher than it is today. Is it unprecedented? It's not unprecedented that we've seen this. We've seen higher temperatures, we've seen higher sea levels in the history of the Earth. But humans weren't even around. The genus Homo wasn't even around 4 million years ago. So it's, again, it's,
We're hosed.
40
meters.
I don't like to read it. I mean,
Yeah.
we're above 400. I mean, it's just, that to me is unprecedented. When you look at it as a paleontologist, is you go through these glacial and interglacial cycles. We're 2 to 4 degrees hotter here, 125,000 years ago. We're probably 2 degrees hotter here, probably 2 degrees hotter here. It's within the range of what we're projecting over the next 100 years. But the problem is this CO2 level is always under 300. And it correlates really good with temperature. So if that's at 400, the CO2 here is like, if this is 300, it just shoots, in the last 100 years, it just shoots up. And it's kind of, and it's, the talk I'm going to give tomorrow is, we can figure stuff out. We have the tools to figure stuff out. You talk to me for an hour. If you were interested in it, read about it. I'm an expert in my area. I look at fossils. I try to understand what happens with climate change. But you have the internet now. You can look at all this stuff firsthand. Don't listen to news journalists and have them tell you what the information is, whether it be this topic or any other topic. They didn't go to school to be scientists. They went to school to be journalists. They're pretty good at it. I mean, sometimes they know what they're talking about. But you have the tools. One, we have the tools as scientists to figure out what's going to happen. But two, is you have the tools to be able to understand all this stuff that's going on, and to look at this data to figure out whether climate change is or is not a problem. And then you can decide whether or not a 2 degrees Celsius change is important enough to do something about. Should we recycle more? Should we make cars that don't use gasoline and put out more CO2 in that? I mean, those are the types of questions that you need to make on an individual basis based on look at data. Don't just go, oh, you know what this guy said, and it's not a problem.
But you're smart enough to be able to wade through that.
Yes, yeah, and
Absolutely.
yeah,
Every
you're
one of
absolutely
us.
smart enough to be able to do that. And yeah, you talk to me for, I have my own personal opinion, and based on what I've studied, you're gonna hear me talk for half an hour tomorrow. That's not enough time. But you do have enough time to go Google, sit down and read about it and learn about climate change and what's happened in the past and what are the consequences of change.
Are there projects that high school students could do here in collaboration with you? Not that you can think of off the top of your head.
Yeah, I have student interns every summer.
Okay.
High school, undergraduate, graduate students, every summer I have students. So yes, absolutely.
There you go. If anybody's interested in biofuels research, I'm starting a biofuels research group. The methane makers is the ones that you'll hear about tomorrow at the beginning of, you know, biofuels should help. All right? Yeah, that's for you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you very much for your comments. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.